This video is not monetized, but is sponsored by Cambly, a brilliant language learning app that I will tell you all about later in the video. You can look forward to that one. British stereotypes. Oh, such a dangerous topic. But as most of my one-on-one students don't know much about this, and they miss a lot of cultural references because of this gap in knowledge, I wanted to talk about them. So I'm going to talk about them. This video is for people who want to better understand what people from the UK might think of each other when we meet, or what our prejudices are based on, given the location we were brought up in. There are lots of British stereotypes in comparison to other countries that I will go through in a podcast that I've done that you can find the link to in the description box below. It's an interesting one. I liked it a lot. But I am here to talk about our own opinions of each other. Now, heading into this video, I was actually planning on going over all of them in general. But after writing about the introduction of the North-South divide, I realised it would be better to do a playlist of videos for you and to focus on one thing at a time. That's easier, isn't it? So this video is going over the North-South divide within England. Future videos in this playlist that I'm going to do will cover the individual countries within the UK. Then I'll go into regions across the UK. All right. Now, the things I'm about to tell you are not for you to necessarily use, because whenever we talk about stereotypes, they are often outdated and even more often used in offensive ways. But most of us still feel them as natives, and as humour is a big part of our culture, we do play with these stereotypes. So I think these thoughts we have about each other are useful for you to at least be aware of, and at best give you a way to connect with us through humour. I do want to say though that stereotypes can be risky. Some people find them very offensive, and then other people take life far less seriously and love having a laugh at their own expense. But if you're wanting to connect with a Brit through stereotyping, I reckon we would respond much better if you used a more localised stereotype than a general one. Because I don't think I know anyone who would particularly laugh if you said, "Ah, you British, you love your tea." But I might chuckle if you know that my neck of the woods is known for wearing a barber, going out in their Range Rovers and playing golf every weekend. Okay, that was just a list. It wasn't very funny, but I'm sure you could find a way to deliver that in a funny way to make me chuckle. And also, I'd be impressed because you are speaking a foreign language, and I'd be appreciative of your knowledge of my culture. So if you didn't get a laugh, at least you'd be given a face of impressedness, which is, or maybe. So, where to begin with this North-South of England divide? Well, it's the elephant in the room when somebody from the north and somebody from the south meet. If they're both open-minded though, and both open-minded about culture and they're worldly folk, or as the questionably cool kids are saying these days, if you are woke, then obviously where you're from doesn't matter. And it really isn't considered by them. But, you know, not everybody is woke, are they? And this elephant in the room is still with us on occasion. So I'm going to tell you about it. Now, it's hard to summarize this difference between the North and the South because there's a lot to unpack here. But if I was to give it a go, I would say, generally speaking, the South think they are better than the North. And I won't say why they think that, because that can get very dangerous. But they generally, they think they're better than the people in the North. And the North, therefore, think that the South are posh wankers for thinking this. I think that's the general vibe that people have. And I know that this is a massive generalization, and some English people, if they were to watch this, might be upset with it. But I have checked quite a few articles that try to explain the differences. I've spoken to some friends from the North and from the South about it, and honestly, I think this is the undercurrent people are sometimes aware of, and we do quite often make little jokes about it. So I think it's that. But the hard thing to figure out for most people is where that divide is. Where's the North and where's the South? What is North? What is South? And it's really quite funny. If you ask somebody this, they will always give you a different response to the next person. Someone from my area, Surrey, might joke about anything above the Thames, the River Thames, being the North. Whereas someone from Newcastle might say anything above Sunderland is in the North, which we all know is wrong. I'm joking. Thankfully though, some clever folk in the geography department have taken into account some cultural and economic factors. Excuse me, Charlie. Who is it? The sponsor of this video. Oh, yeah. Camberley, come on in. Oh, you want me to do it? Camberley have a brilliant way for you to take your English skills to the next level and put all of the real English you learn here on YouTube into practice. And if you haven't heard of them, they are an online language school where you can take one-to-one language lessons with native English teachers and practice your speaking skills. Yes, and you can also prepare for your exams or even try out their newly designed courses that range from conversational English to business English, which after looking at them myself, I'd be pretty keen to start using their materials as a teacher. So it shows that the company are constantly aiming to improve the experience for the learner. And what's more is that they really do live up to their motto, which is to learn English at the touch of a button. And it's so true. If you go on the app, you can really connect with a native English speaking teacher within 5 seconds. It's astonishing. So if you have a last minute moment to practice, or you hate booking in advance, some of my students hate booking. So yeah, you should really download Camberley and have them ready to go when you have a moment to have some speaking practice. And as you are watching our content, we are able to give you a significant discount if you click the link in the description box and use the code REALTEACHERS10, and you'll get up to 32% discount on their subscriptions, which is really very generous. So if you like the look of that, check out the link in the description box below. Thank you, Camberley, for sponsoring this video and being able to give you this content, and let's carry on. Thankfully though, some clever folk in the geography department have taken into account some cultural and economic factors and found that if we turn that horizontal line that we just all assume is the divide into a diagonal line, and start just north of Gloucester and go up to just south of Grimsby, we have a fairly understandable north-south divide. The problem with going just straight across would mean that some areas in the east, but fairly north or in the Midlands, which we'll talk about, those places like Norwich, most people would think that that is a place in the south. But then that is kind of similar to Nottingham, Coventry, and people would think that some of those cities are more considered to be towards the north. But as I said, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's carry on. We do have what's called the Midlands, but we all have different opinions of the Midlands, and it's kind of unfairly treated, because I feel like the Midlands aren't wanted on anyone's team. As the North say that the Midlands is part of the South, and vice versa. When you ask a Southerner, they'll say, no, it's part of the North. So people from the Midlands are kind of in no man's land, and also in both man's lands. It's not a phrase, but there you go. Let me flesh out these differences between the North and the South a bit more for you to better understand them. Again, once more, if you are a Brit or somebody who is taking offence to this, just remember, I am saying this to help non-natives better understand the culture we were brought up in and our current day behaviours because of that. So, here goes. All right. The South are thought to be wealthier, more cosmopolitan, well-travelled and open-minded. But you could say they are arrogant, pretentious, less tough or physically weaker, and more likely to complain and be less accepting about their life. And the South are also thought to be less friendly. What do you think of that? I'm not married to these ideas. These are just stereotypes that I've seen, experienced and read online. So if you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see your opinion. Whereas the Northerners are known as friendlier, tougher and untroubled by the cold weather. They're also known as harder working and will put up with those worse conditions, but they are stereotyped as being less educated and more closed-minded about the world. And they also apparently have less or worse physical health. Again, stereotypes. Very often outdated and inaccurate, but some of these are still in the back of some people's minds. And if people wish to, there are a huge amount of jokes to be made towards each other, depending on which side of the divide you are on. So, for example, I'm from the South, and I definitely notice my lack of manliness is often something that is picked apart by Northern friends. Mainly because I'm not manly, but it also works well with my stereotype of sounding a bit posh and liking non-contact sports like cricket, golf and tennis. So, I mean, my Southern friends also rip the piss out of me for not being manly enough, but I do think it's less of an easy joke for Southern friends than Northern friends. And if I was a Northerner, I would think about taking the piss out of a Southerner for being pathetic, if they mentioned the weather was cold, or if they couldn't drink as much as me, because the North are known as heavier drinkers than the South. And if a Southerner said something really posh, then I think a Northerner is quite tempted to take the piss out of that as well. And then on the flip side, a Southerner might try to have a go at a Northerner, which I actually think is less acceptable these days. For some reason, I'm not sure, but if they were to, they might poke fun at them for being uncultured, sounding simple, or not being able to afford something. But that last suggestion is awful. But again, only through humour. If you all feel comfortable with it, it's fine and it's funny. But again, it's so subjective. But I do get this feeling as a southerner that northerners have a bit of a chip on their shoulder for the fact that the south still has more money. The housing is more expensive, and then salaries are higher in the south. So maybe that's why we can't take the piss out of the north as much as the north can take the piss out of the south. But I would certainly get a lot of comments about sounding posh from a northerner who I might not even know very well. They'd be quite comfortable just to say that I sound like a posh wanker. But I would feel very uncomfortable to joke about a northerner sounding uncultured or common if we are, unless we are very good friends. And still that feels a bit awkward. Maybe because I'm referencing something that's more considered more negatively associated than being posh. But I don't know, in the north, some people find poshness to be really annoying. So I'm a bit confused there, but that's what I've experienced. I would personally not feel comfortable taking the piss out of a northerner's accent as much as I receive it being called posh. But let's try another stereotype perhaps. So another topic is weather. And as I said, the north are untroubled by cold weather. Yeah, I'd feel comfortable with that, mentioning that they are tougher or unable to feel the cold because they've experienced harsher conditions. Yeah. I think you can joke about that. What else is there? Mentioning that they are friendlier. It's not very funny, but yeah, maybe you could. London is the hub for unfriendliness, according to the stereotype. So yeah, you could. People do joke about that, saying, "Oh, going to London, you'll feel unappreciated. No one will like you." Yeah, but I tell you what, I might feel okay to joke about how a northerner can handle bad working conditions because their grandparents were all miners. I'm joking. Again, I know this isn't true, but quite a few of my northern friends, that was legitimately the truth. And so we joke about the fact that they grew up in a coal mine. But yeah, you've got to be really careful. Positive stereotypes are going to be welcomed more so towards each other. But when we are on our own, we do joke about the opposite side of the country more freely or more openly when there's or in fact when there's one southerner in a group of northerners or the other way round, then that individual would be the butt of the stereotypical jokes quite frequently. And I should just say one last reminder, this is when everyone is participating in a fun, harmless manner. In this day and age, a lot of people just find it funny. And it's so outdated that it is funny. After all, the mines are mostly closed down. Inheritance tax is on the up. Assets, I think, are at about 40%. And the BBC are pushing for a more realistic representation of the country in the media. But since this is a language learning channel, I should stress that the biggest tell for us, just like in your country, no doubt, is the accent to divide the north and the south. And in future videos I'll go through these topics in more specific and accurate ways by talking about one region at a time. But one main difference between northern accents and southern ones is the long or short A sound in words like grass, bath, shaft, giraffe, can't. And this is where the differences are felt, and often people are biased. According to various studies, most northern people think their accent is friendlier and more approachable, and think that the southern accent sounds too snobby or pretentious, and some say it sounds over the top and stupidly posh. Whereas people with southern accents think theirs is preferable, as they believe it sounds more sophisticated and will judge a northern accent for sounding common. In an ideal world, we would ignore all of this and just take people on their personality and characteristics. But some research supports the link between accent, region, and identity. So if I spoke like a Mancunian, I would most likely have lived in Manchester and have a bias towards the culture that I was exposed to growing up. So, in my opinion, it makes sense why we still listen out for an accent, as it gives us an indication or an understanding of what their upbringing was like. I think it's the interpretation of that upbringing which is the questionable part, where we might stereotype in the wrong way. And that is an area that I will go into per region in future videos. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. Were you aware of the North-South divide? Have you experienced any North-South references if you've been to England? Or have you seen it in the media? I'd love to hear your views and meet you down in the comments. That's all from me today. My name's Charlie. I'll see you again soon on Real English with Real Teachers. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram to get more day-to-day posts and stories helping you learn English in more dynamic and interactive ways.